everybody hear me? Okay. My name is Brian Moon. I'm a senior web engineer for dealnews.com. There's my personal blog and my Twitter. I mostly rant about cigars and things on Twitter. It might not be interesting to you guys. That's our website. We publish about 200 unique deals every day on just about anything we can find for sale on the internet. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about is what happens when something unexpected occurs. This is an actual graph of ours from 2006. We hired a PR firm, and they did a good job. They got us mentioned in an article on a Yahoo tech blog about buying LCD televisions after Christmas. And Yahoo made that the featured article on the very front page of their front page. We were the third link in the second paragraph on that article, so we were like one click, two paragraphs and 3 links away, and this is what happened. You can see the green graph is the previous week, the week leading up to Christmas, and it's pretty clear what the difference is there. So when you have this unexpected event, a slash dotting or one of those things, which we've been slash dotted, we've been put on dig before. Yeah, the Yahoo event was unique and incredible on its own. One of the reasons it was unique and incredible is, everyone in here realizes your number one search phrase from Google for your site is your domain name, because people go to Google, type in your domain name to find your site. So we actually ended up on Yahoo's buzzworthy top 10 list of search terms for most of this long tail. We were only actually on their front page for about an hour, but people read about Deal News on Yahoo, and then they were searching Yahoo for Deal News. So then we made it into their top 10 list of search words for 4 or 5 hours. But when you have this sort of event, it's likely going to be one page, your front page or some article that's gotten picked up by someone, and at first it's going to be probably coming from one place, whatever source is causing the rush. With Twitter and things like that these days, you'll have a sort of viral effect where things will go out. But in our case, we knew this was coming from Yahoo, and we knew that it was all going to our front page, because that's where they linked to. So there were things we could do to handle that, and this is the most low-tech thing, and it kind of plays into what the guys from Flickr were talking about. We had things we could take down. We had things we could shut off, and we had talked about what is acceptable service. Dynamically generating the page every time for every user who was coming from Yahoo wasn't that important at that time. So we used our load balancers to redirect anybody coming from Yahoo to a server that just had a static copy of our front page that was being updated via cron job every 5 minutes. It was a static file coming out of Apache. Apache can serve that static file at blazingly fast speeds, and it was just updated. Now, it didn't do things like tell you how many new deals were there since your last visit, which is one of the things our front page does. It didn't give you some of the other dynamic features that our front page has, but these were all people coming straight from Yahoo, probably never heard of us, never been to our site before, so it didn't really matter at that time to keep an acceptable level of service for all of our normal readers. We have in the past, we've had other events where we've had to take down, we had to segment our forums off. We used to have a very, very active Macintosh-related forum, and when Steve Jobs would give the keynote, traffic on our Macintosh forums would just explode. So we would use our load balancers and segment those requests to a certain set of servers, and those would get a certain level of service, and that's all we could do for them, but we didn't affect our readers of our other parts of our site and our other properties to service this forum traffic. So it's really low tech in that regards, in that you just have to know what, you have to have a plan. It's not this great technology that lets you do anything you want. You just have to have a plan for how you're going to deal with unexpected behavior. Stuff that probably everyone in this group is doing already, caching database queries, even content caching. We did some content caching during some events where we would just cache entire blocks of HTML in Memcache just to make everything run faster, run smoother. We originally used file-based caching, but that's probably the first. Nowadays, Memcache is so prevalent, you probably just go straight to Memcache. There's not a whole lot of people I talk to who their first foray into caching is file-based caching, but when we started doing caching in '99, there wasn't Memcache out there as a solution. If you've just got one web server, you can use in-process caches. In-process caches, like on the PHP stack, if you're using an opcode cache like Xcache or APC, they can do in-memory caching. And if you don't need a distributed cache like Memcache, they're way faster than Memcache. I'm active on the Memcache mailing list, and people complain that, hey, my file-based cache, when I test this one scenario, is way faster than Memcache. Well, yeah, if you hit the same file 100,000 times in 5 seconds, it's going to be way faster than Memcache because it's in your kernel's file cache in memory. So, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about, making content static. If you have a sudden rush on a particular dynamically generated blog post or whatever, make it static, put a redirect in Apache, and deal with it that way. I mean, it's not real, it's not real complicated. It's not real, high tech, but it gets the job done for those unexpected events when you need to stay up and keep a level of service to your to your other users and readers. So that's sort of the unexpected. The other part of this is how you deal with expected growth. This is another actual graph. This is June of 2006 through May of 2009. And this is basically how every graph we've ever had has ever looked in our 13 years in business. We have a huge spike at Christmas time, as you can imagine, and then we retain 50% or 50 to 60% of that traffic through the next year, and then we have another huge spike the next Christmas. It continues this way every single year. And ironically, before Yahoo happened to us, we had already that fall talked about what we were going to do. We actually used the fall and Christmas time when content team doesn't want us making a lot of changes because that's our busiest time of the year, to talk about, hey, our current architecture is not going to make it another 2 years because this was our graph we were looking at. So what is the architecture we have to put in place to handle this growth for the near future? We realized there was no magic bullet. We couldn't just make this. There's just not this holy grail of architecture that will just scale infinitely by just adding servers and this and that. But you have to think, what do I want to be able to handle in 3 years so that I'm not re-architecting every year? So that's what we kind of did. This is that same graph on top, and these graphs are to the same scale. And as you can see below, this past Christmas, this is a day out of our Christmas season, and what was once an extreme event that kept 2 people away from their families at dinner time, fiddling with configurations and making changes and in a panic mode, is now the norm. Those same traffic levels are what we expect during Christmas season. And I was off this day. It was no big deal because we planned for it. One of the things we did was we used proxy servers. Varnish, Squid, they talk about those. We made our own. Varnish didn't exist, I think, when I made this one, or it's the first time I'd heard about it was last year at Velocity. And Squid, there were some things we didn't like about Squid. But all of them will do what you need, which is they reduce the load on your application servers. Even if you're not caching, a proxy can reduce load on your application servers because the user makes a connection to the proxy. The proxy makes a super fast LAN connection to your application server. Your application server can just dump all that data back to the proxy, and it can deliver over a slow connection, whatever the speed of the client is, but your application server gets done with that request as fast as your proxy server can read it back. And then on top of that, you can then cache some of that content. Everything at Dual News is cached. Now, our TTL, the maximum TTL we have on any object in our cache is 5 minutes. Our front page is cached for 1 minute to 2 minutes. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have 100 requests per second, if you can have 2-minute TTL, that's a lot of requests that get served straight out of memory and never have to hit an application server to be generated or anything like that. Another thing we did was really looked at what happens when there is no cache. Because one of the things that happened to us during the Yahoo event was a cache stampede. The front page would be pulled from the database, cache would be generated, and then other requests would use that cache, but then at some point that cache would expire. And at the point that cache expires, the next request regenerates that cache. And that sounds really great in practice until you have 1,000 requests per second from Yahoo. And that means that in that second, when that Memcache key expires, 1,000 requests run the same query to regenerate that cache. And totally fill your MySQL connection pool up, load your MySQL server to the point where it's basically deadlocked, and you're dead. So how do you deal with cache stampedes? And a lot of people are going to do this differently. I've talked to several people this week about how they deal with cache stampedes. What we decided to do, we made our goal to attempt to store the data in a denormalized fashion in MySQL, in a pool of replicated MySQL servers, so that we could, at the application layer, not actually use any caching. We actually, the only caching we do is at the proxy level. We take about 300 tables in our primary database, which is very well normalized and very robust, and you can join data in all sorts of fancy ways. And we condense that down to about 30 tables on our front-end read database servers. If an article has a list of vendors associated with it, we take that list of vendors, stick them in an array, turn that into a blob of JSON, and stick it in a medium text. We're never going to index on that field. We just need that data when we pull that article to show it to somebody, to show the list of vendors that are associated with that article. The other thing we try to do is make all the reads on those tables primary keys or unique keys, never a scan, never any sort of file sorts. I mean, we control the queries that read from those tables. They're guarded. They're guarded like gold. There's a certain place that the functions that access those tables live, and that's the only way the developers access that data. And so when a new query is created, it's tested. It's almost like a stored procedure in a way, but it's all living in our PHP code base. And what we found is when we tested this, essentially when we turned off Memcache during our testing, everything doubled, load average doubled, response time doubled, all those things. But they were doubling from 0.8 seconds to 1.5 seconds to return a page. So if the worst case scenario is all the caches die and everything goes to 1.5 seconds to deliver our front page, I'm okay with that, because the caches are going to fill back up pretty quickly. I'm probably not going to lose, let's see, there's 4 in one data center, 3 in another data center. Servers have Memcache on them, and that's across 2 data centers in 2 different parts of the country. I'm probably not going to lose them all at one time. So, and even if I did, we can handle it. And we do some caching at the application layer. This is a little bit of a misnomer for us. Things like ads, things that just never change. Like once a creative for an ad is added into our database for our ad system, the salespeople aren't allowed to edit it. It's static. So at that point, when we want to know the information about that ad, we just stick it in Memcache with a 0 TTL, and it lives there as long as it's relevant and not pushed out on an eviction. As far as the duplicating data, if you have 3 tables that all are, have a foreign key to a vendor table, take that vendor name and just stick it in that table with it when you're pushing it out to the front like this. If you're going to need to show that vendor name on that page with some other data, put it in the same table with it. And it just really comes in a case-by-case basis where you have to figure out, this is my application, and what are the pages in terms of types of pages, classifications of pages. Deal news, we have a front page, we have a deal page, we have a store page, search page, and a category page. That's it. Now, there are however many hundreds of thousands unique URLs on our site, but we really only have 5 pages that access this type of data, display it in this type of way, and so we can focus on, and how do we need to access this data? For our front page, we only have to hit one table, and we pull 100 rows to 200 rows out of it, and bam, that's it. And it's all primary key based. It's all primary key, and all the data we need to display that article, where its image URL is, which is in a separate table in the real database, what vendor is associated with it, which is in a separate table in the real database, is all in one table. We read primary key, 200 rows. MySQL is really fast at that. I know it doesn't necessarily scale the way everyone wishes it would, but reading 200 rows with a primary key, it's really fast at. So we don't have a whole lot of heavy write loads. We do have some that is not really related to our web infrastructure, but a lot of log processing we do. But the best thing I can give you about that, the few places where we do write heavy stuff, you want to have that stuff happen out of band. If someone is posting data, up through a web page, you don't want to have that particular request be responsible for writing that to 4 servers or synchronously getting that to wherever it needs to go. You need to use some sort of job management system to move that stuff around. And again, where our data gets written initially for permanent storage, sort of like where it lives, and where the actual front-end web servers actually read it from, are 2 totally separate set of servers. That means that a write flood on the main database couldn't affect the actual reads for delivering our front page, and vice versa. A huge flood of reads for our front page couldn't keep our content team from writing articles. It's separated. Matter of fact, we lost our primary database server last fall completely. And the readers didn't know until the fact that they couldn't write content anymore, and content started getting really, really stale. But the actual front-end website stayed up, running. Nobody knew anything. It did all of its job. All the data was there. Everything was fine. For testing, and this is about scalability. This is not like day-to-day unit testing, making sure something didn't break, that type of testing. I'm talking about when you decide, hey, we are growing at a certain rate, and we're going to need to be able to handle this kind of load 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever, and you need to do a re-architecture, or you need to test a major architectural change. First, you need to decide how big you want to scale. For us, it was we took the Yahoo event, and we were like, we want to handle 3 times that Yahoo event, with no degradation, right? We want to be able to handle 3 times that Yahoo event and still have room for more. With all of our servers and everything in place, be able to handle the Yahoo event and not have a degradation of service. We benchmarked our production servers. We rolled we made initial tests and benchmarks and things like that on our development environment and our staging environment. But when it came down to, is this the right solution and is this going to get us through this Christmas, we turned it loose on our production environment. We told everybody, hey, we're going to slam the site this afternoon. We started the test. We had our button on the stop, in case anything went wrong. But that told us, yes, this solution is going to work, or no, it didn't. We had to go through several iterations because we found out quickly the thing that had been most stable for us for years, which was our ad serving system, actually became the bottleneck after we re-architected everything else. So we had to actually go back and make changes to our ad serving system. And so we went through probably 2 or 3 test iterations before we found the right solution. Again, determine acceptable load. You know, you have to decide what is okay for your servers. You know, there's been a lot of talk about user experience, and that's a whole other valid discussion that's great that I actually need to do more of. But the load average of your servers does matter to somebody, okay? It may not matter to everybody, but it does matter to somebody. If the server's running out of memory, or the server has a 20 load, or it's 100% CPU spike, that's bad. But you need to decide what's acceptable. We like to actually run our systems at about 25% capacity because we have this sort of belief that we would like to be able to run normal day-to-day operations as of today on a quarter of our equipment. You know, because if you're upgrading two boxes and another box, and you lose a circuit in a whole rack, you know, that's some other boxes, you want to have some server still there that can actually support your load. You know, recently when, I don't know if you guys remember the fiber cut that happened here in San Jose a month or two ago, I guess it was. We lost our entire San Francisco data center for a whole day. You know, we had to take everything back to Atlanta. You know, but we were able to take everything back to Atlanta and not have any degradation of service to our readers, other than people on the West Coast had to go all the way to Atlanta to get our content. Last week, our CDN was doing maintenance, and maintenance apparently meant returning 500 errors for all of our images. So, because apparently, you know, people in D.C. were going to Seattle's CDN location, which was, instead of reading from San Francisco, reading from Atlanta, and between all that, they decided that was too big of a timeout. So we ended up we just turned the CDN off. We took all that bandwidth back in-house. We paid overage charges out the yin-yang for 3 days, you know, but on our bandwidth. But it, you know, we were able to handle it. And we used the service, Keynote is who we used to do our load testing. And they were able to send us 6,000 concurrent requests from 8 different locations in the United States at one time. And you can create all kind of great siege scripts, but you can't replicate that yourself with some cron jobs and a few shared servers all over. I mean, it's not something I would say you need to do once a month, but for a major change where you need to have some huge expected, capacity, it was invaluable. We could not have known any other way that we were going to be ready for the next Christmas, and that it wasn't going to fall over. So I got one more slide I added today because I've heard this 10 times, which is not really completely related, but I've heard at least 5 people comment about how bad the performance can get from third-party content, like tracking tags and ads and things. And we solved that because we put all of it at the very bottom of the page, and we put it all in an iframe, put all those tracking tags in an iframe, put all the ads in an iframe, and advertisers hate us for it. And the sales team bitches and moans. But the CEO likes it a lot better. When Google went down about 3 weeks ago on the East Coast, and all of our competitors' pages stopped at the header because the Google ad wouldn't come in, ours didn't, you know. And if you go to Deal News and load it, you'll see that the ad comes in, I mean, way late. Like sometimes by the time you leave the site, the ad's not even there yet. I don't care, okay? I don't care if the ad gets there or not. You know, so it's, you know, but anyway, so that that was just, I've heard that one a lot. One thing on this, as far as, you know, Twitter talked about how if they lose Memcache, they're just down, you know, and one of our goals was to not have that be possible. And we're lucky enough that our data set is not huge, and how many people in here have Twitter traffic? You know, I mean, yeah, Flickr raised their hand, nobody else, right? So I think for the size that probably most everyone in here is, it's a semi-realistic goal to not, you know, if you lose a Memcache node, you're down for 2 hours. I mean, I talked to someone like 3 years ago that they said if we lose one Memcache server, we're down for 12 hours. How are you down for 12 hours from losing one Memcache server? You know, you've got to have a backup for that problem. You can't have one small component of your infrastructure go down, and then it's okay to be down for hours and hours. I mean, it's a lot about having the degraded service. What's okay, what's acceptable service to our to our users. Whether it's having the flags to turn things on and off as needed, or whether it's it's okay for our response times to go up by a second as long as we're still serving requests and everything's okay. So I don't know. That's just something that it's come up a lot this week about people saying, well, if we lose our cache, we're dead. And I'm sure for some things, that for some applications like Twitter, that may very well be because the technology just can't service the level of requests they need. But I don't think that you need to walk away from here thinking, oh, well, Twitter said if they lose their cache, we're dead. So that's okay for us to think that way too. It's always good to have the goal that not happen. Reality strikes. I have a goal that I'll never be down. That's my goal, but it's not going to happen. I know that. But if that's your goal, at least you're working towards it. At least you're trying to do things that are going to achieve that goal. So anyway, I just thought I'd add that in. So any questions? Anyone? Okay. Thanks a lot.